Jesus, it's packed.
Yeah, go down the back there, so. Welcome to The Snug with Richie and Lavin. Anyway, hello and welcome. This is The Snug, a podcast from the west coast of Ireland. My name is Richard Loftus.
And I'm Lavin.
And in this podcast, we talk to all types of folks from across the west coast of Ireland. Some may hail from the west coast of Ireland, and some maybe have just made it its home. Any crack? How are you?
Yeah, not a bunch of cracks. Helped a buddy build a porch,
How was that?
like a flagstone porch.
Heavy work?
Huh? I wasn't at all. No.
No.
I was barely doing anything. I was just sort of standing around saying, "Oh yeah, that looks great."
Yeah, when you mentioned you were doing manual labour, I was a bit surprised. Let's
Yeah.
just say.
Well, it wasn't. It wasn't proper manual labor, but it was good crack. We had a good time. Went down to Dingle, which is okay. Went to Kenmare, which was actually really nice.
What were you doing down there?
Just random. Just a bunch of friends were like, "Oh, we're going down," and I said, "Sure, I'll drive down
you
for the crack."
were, yeah.
And Dingle's Dingle. Dingle's doesn't need me to big it up,
Yeah.
People will go to Dingle, even if I shit on Dingle. People go to Dingle.
Sure, we might be going there for the
But,
stag next year.
But Kenmare is really nice. That's actually it's close enough, but people should definitely check that place out.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, Kenmore is gorgeous. All right.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I think I've been there once before, but it was lovely.
Yeah.
2 main streets, lots of pubs, kind of like Westport.
Yeah.
Very similar, actually.
Yeah, sure. It's all those kind of touristy towns are kind of the same, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I suppose. Yeah.
They have the same kind of vibe.
I found that Dingle was very like, it's like okay, all right, here I am,
Well, that's what it's set up for.
Very,
isn't it?
very what do you call it, touristy.
Yeah. Well, it's not too bad. Like, it still has a bit of. It has charm,
It has charm. Yeah, I guess it does.
Yeah.
Brosnan's is a nice pub. I like that pub.
Yeah.
I had a good time. Now I'm doing this thing where I'm listening to a new artist every week.
Oh.
So I started last week.
What you start with?
Jimmy Rogers. I don't know. He's the yodeling cowboy. He likes the yodel. And I wanted a genre skip or a genre jump and go like, is it My Bloody Valentine? Is that like the shoegazy boys?
Yeah.
I wanted to go like adjacent to them, but I just ended up starting on Woody Guthrie instead. So that's this week's artist.
Yeah, what you call it? Woody Guthrie and My Bloody Valentine. You wouldn't exactly put them poles apart.
What I wanted to do, but for some reason I was just like, so I want to go from Jimmy Rogers to like shoegaze, but it just ended up. I was like, I'll just do Woody Guthrie this week instead.
What you got? Your man from My Bloody Valentine. He was actually born in Ireland.
Yeah, I think a lot of them are Irish in that band.
Yeah, so you can actually technically say that's an Irish album.
Yeah,
but like,
what's that album? It's that pink one.
Loveless.
Is that the name of it?
Yeah, I was actually just watching a YouTube video about it there.
Really? Okay, great. Yeah, I remember listening to it a few years ago and I loved it, but I'll maybe next week I'll kind of get into that again. Well, I'm trying to do things that I haven't heard before.
Yeah. It's always a good way. What you call it? What's in My Bag? Did you ever watch that YouTube channel?
No.
It's
yes, I saw Matt Berry on it.
Yeah.
And there was he like pulled out one by Stars or something.
Mm.
I was thinking like that would probably be a good thing to go on to choose this self-imposed new artist every week thing I'm doing.
Yeah, it's great just for eclectic stuff that you'd never really listen to.
Yeah.
Like, people was like, oh yeah, fucking North African, disco music from the 70s or whatever,
Yeah.
a deep dive into complete and utter mayhem, like.
Yeah. Oh, like I've been listening to what is it? African music shared on cell phones in sub-Saharan Africa. So it's just like WhatsApp like music that they send to each other. And it's fucking class.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a playlist on Spotify. I forget the actual name of it, but it's brilliant. If you like that kind of, that genre, like Saharan African rock music is amazing these days. Like, what's their names? Sorry, I'm kind of going on a tangent here.
You're okay. Go on.
Is it Tianarwin? I think are in that crowd. There's another one. Mdu Mokhtar. He's like a psychedelic kind of left-handed, basically like a Saharan like Jimi Hendrix, you know. He's brilliant. So yeah, no, it's great listening to all kinds of music, isn't it?
Yeah, it's mighty.
It's mighty.
It's mighty. Anyway, today, just to veer off to go on a complete different vein, we have Rab Fulton. Rab is a man of many, many talents. He's a storyteller. He's a writer. He's an educator. Rab, how are you?
I'm good. I'm just getting in tune with my sub-Saharan rock vibe just now. It's all good, yeah.
Any crack? So, people are based around Galway, probably all across Ireland, would probably be familiar with the kind of stuff that you do on a regular basis. It's kind of Shanachie kind of storytelling, what it's based in initially.
Yeah.
But you're originally from Scotland. Whereabouts in Scotland are you from?
I'm originally from Glasgow, and I guess like a lot of folk for Glasgow, I've got that mixed Scottish-Irish heritage thing going on as well. So that's where I'm originally from. But I've been here now. I actually don't know how long I've been here now. I've been here a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And would there be much of a history of storytelling similar to Shanachie in Scotland?
Oh yeah. I mean, Shanachie's a Scottish word as well. So
okay.
Yeah, it's I kind of guess I was lucky in Glasgow where I was brought up. It wouldn't be formally storytelling, but folk, I guess it's the crack, you know. There was that telling of stories in my family, and the different kind of, I guess, cultural backgrounds feeding in there as well. So there was stories being told of some sort. It was very, and then obviously we were moving between kind of English and then what used to be called bad English, Scots.
Scots, yeah.
So I'd be brought up both those kind of things as well, moving between them. So it was very kind of, it was very lots of words in my childhood, and it was a very important part of it. So Glasgow, and I think that's a Glasgow thing. I mean, Glasgow's got we'd call more traditional storytellers like the Shawnackies, but you also have storytellers like Billy Connolly, who's an incredible storyteller. So you got all that going on in the background, bubbling away, and I would be exposed to all that as well as the stories of my own family. So I was very lucky that way.
And would there be like a tradition, like I know the way you do a show in the Crane Bar here in Galway, would there be like a night like that in I don't know, you wouldn't call them traditional bars in Scotland?
Well, it's kind of weird because I've been out of Scotland so long that there's been so many changes in Scotland, not just with I guess the optimism with culturally has changed since I left just before the Parliament was reconvened. So I'm aware that there's a lot more going on. When I was in Glasgow, you'd have pubs like the Clutha or pubs like that would have folk music. It was like folk pubs again.
Yeah.
Like the Crane here. And you would get storytellers in there as well. So as part of that. So you'd have storytelling. You'd have the music. And then you'd have poetry as well. So yeah, it was all going on.
And then would your interest in that, in storytelling and writing, would that have been sparked while you were living in Glasgow, or was it I
was involved with words, you know, so I came up through performance poetry. That was one thing I was doing. And then at that time in Scotland there was a lot of kind of protests and stuff, social justice protests going on. So I was also involved in organising like community newspapers and stuff like that, writing that. So again, that was the word as well. And so the words, whether it was English words or Scots words, were a very important part, using words. And one of the things I was also very involved in, which I do here, was trying to get other folk to get their stories out.
Mm-hmm.
It's always been a big important part of things. Like, I talk enough. I'm quite happy to shut up and let other folk talk. And a lot of my work was about giving folk their own voice, and I do that here with, I've done podcasting here as well, where I just get other folk to do their own voices. So it's all. And then when I came here, I had in my head a lot of traditional stories. I was family stories and traditional stories anyway. So when I came here, initially I was trying to do the poetry, but nobody understood my poetry, so fuck it. I just went and tell stories instead.
Yeah.
And folk can understand the stories, that's fine. I tell the stories just in English. The poetry switches between Scots and English and can baffle folk, but the storytelling's mostly, acceptable Queen Elizabeth II Wang Mei the key kind of proper English,
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Aye. Does that answer the story? Okay. Don't ask me any questions because I go off in one. But anyway, I think there's an answer in there somewhere, and the answer is maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah. That's the answer for everything. That's a good one.
Maybe.
Tangents are fantastic, aren't they? Really though.
Sure, I think that's what kind of this show is going to be built on as we go forward.
I'd hope so. Anyway, yeah.
Like,
I think a good tangent's always a good place to go.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm for tangents.
So the show that you do now,
it's
kind of based on kind of folklore, big mix of mythology and stuff like that. Would you see? Is there Scottish versions of Irish stories and vice versa? Do you see a lot of crossover between those kind of two traditions?
There is. I mean, it's kind of weird in that coming here, some of my family stories, I realise, they've been told to me in Scotland, and I'm thinking of Scottish stories. But coming here, I'm realising there's obviously the Irish heritage roots are in those stories. But then other stories I've got through my family are definitely from the Scottish thing. So there's in my family, there's a blend.
Yeah.
But then culturally, generally in Scotland and Ireland, there's that blending as well, where, you will have characters. I'm trying to think, even just like folkloric characters, like folk who've fought the fairies and end up running off to Scotland just to kind of hide.
Yeah.
Or just giants, or even going back to the Fina. There's like these stories going back and forward, or I guess the classic one is Satanta becomes Cuchulainn, but he still has to learn how to sword fight, so he has to go to Scotland because of course the best sword fighters are the women in the Isle of Skye, so he has to go and learn for them, but they all want to shag him, and it starts a war in the kind of Isle of Skye, then he has to leave with his wee sword.
Yeah.
So there's all that kind of, there's definitely blending of the stories. And for myself, because I don't have Irish or Gaelic, I'm very aware. I come from Scots and English, but I'm very aware in Ireland that, or the stories I'm engaged with Ireland, there's a lovely linguistic thing going on in English. The kind of really playing with words in a different way to Scotland. I'm not explaining it right, but there's definitely different ways of communicating in English stories. But there's a difference there. There's and I'm not explaining it right, so I'm just going to hold my wish and say no more. That's it. I don't know what I'm talking about, but I do know what I'm talking about. It's kind of, there's a more kind of longer way to make an expression in Ireland, whereas in Scotland might be a bit more abrupt. Getting there.
Okay.
But that might just be a Glasgow thing.
Okay. So he goes through the straight front door and we might go around the back door, kind of.
Aye, but we'll get there.
You still get there. Still get there.
But I'm sure there'll be plenty of folk listening to this podcast will say he's talking shite. That's all right. I'm allowed to talk shite. I'm Glaswegian.
Yeah.
So,
So when you landed over from Ireland first, Was it the writing then that came along with you when you moved over?
It was mostly the writing, but the writing was mostly the poetry. And at that point, you know, I'd been published in quite a number of well-known journals in Ireland as well, like Poetry Island and Ciphers and other. So I was coming here already, having been published in poetry magazines and stuff and collections in Ireland. But I guess it didn't kind of. I'd come from a very specific type of poetry engagement in Scotland, which was very much in the run up to this, you know, the reconvening of the Parliament. There was a lot of community work and a lot of.
What year was that, Rob?
No, I think that was 99.
That
But
was 99.
Yeah, but I was over here just before that got reconvened. But I was involved in all the kind of the fun and frolics that led up to that, and so there's a lot of poetry involved in that as well. But I was very aware when I came here that I didn't want to jump and presume that I knew what was going on in Ireland, because I didn't. So I kind of was just kind of taking a step back.
When you say knew what was going on,
Yeah.
do you mean like from a political standpoint or?
Political, social, community level, you know, there's lots of different things going on here. And it's been very interesting watching those things coming together. You know, like, you know, the whole marriage equality and women's bodily autonomy and all that sort of stuff. Watching that happening, it's been quite amazing watching that. And supporting it as well. But I've went kind of very quietly just doing wee things like I've carried on the idea of just when I can get other folks' voices out with my own recordings and podcasting, and then just use my own social media platforms to kind of promote things.
When you say like other people's voices out, I know you did two podcast series
Yeah.
based in Ballyban and Westside.
Yeah.
And that was kind of with people from kind of diverse backgrounds.
Yeah, it was that like again, this was definitely my Scottish head on me, but it was one of those parts of my Scottish head that really did click with what was that in Ireland is the same problem, is that there's this idea that you know, who owns culture, what is culture, and of course, I guess there's that kind of idea that there are certain folk who are naturally assumed to be involved with culture simply because of, well, you know, the classic ethnicity, class, qualification thing, you know, and other folk who aren't seen as being it because they come from outside that prescribed norm for culture. And that's very damaging for everybody. So obviously I come from a working class perspective.
Yeah.
And so those podcasts I was talking to, I was talking to working class folk, traveller community folk, and then migrant folk as well, folk who've come here from other countries. So that was kind of nice getting all those voices, and I really loved, particularly the Ballyban voices, just with these rolling conversations. You're like folk listening to Scottish, be Scottish, talk to Irish, and there is that commonality, and folk outside wondering, all right, so this is where we've landed, and then they're bringing in their stories and their folk tales, and it was very nice. We chatted about folklore in the different countries. I'm trying to think. We had folk from Eritrea, Latvia, Serbia. You know, it was a bit. Oh, they had their own. There was their own stories about folklore and myth, and also just rituals, faith as well, rituals and faith, and how chats about how different communities and different religions celebrate big events like deaths or you know, that those kind of big rituals. So there's always lovely conversations, and for me, that's all culture.
Yeah.
You know, it's it might not win you a Booker Prize, but it's as valid, engaging, powerful culture as anything else. So that was very important to me to get that, and that feeds into my storytelling as well. I mean, my storytelling, you know, I'm using folklore and myth, and there is an idea that folklore and myth in Scotland and Ireland is very much a white, straight, male preserve, but it isn't. If you actually look into it and do your research, you know, that's one interpretation of it, and that's never been the case. In Ireland and Scotland have never been white, male, heterosexual countries only.
Yeah.
It's always been others doing their stuff, and so I'm very aware of bringing those voices into those perspectives into my stories as well. So again, I'm tangenting here. So
Obviously, those stories, when you're getting like folklore and from different influences, that probably influenced your writing then, because you had two kind of folklore books written in 2012 and 2013.
it did. I mean, I had a book out before them, Transformation, which is I wrote it when I was in Galway, quite early on, and I think that was I'd been here a few years now. It was about 2004 I wrote it, and then I self-published it, and then I think it was eventually published as a proper book quite late on, 2012. There's a lag time between my things getting published, so it might have been actually ended up being published properly about the same time as the Folk Tales books came out. But that's a nice story. That was using, it was set in contemporary Galway. A folkloric figure comes into that story and starts causing hassle in nightclubs and all sorts of stuff. And it's a very poetic book. It's a love story, but it's a horror story. The horror is there to allow the reader to examine the nature of faith and loss.
So it's kind of elements of what's the term? Magical realism.
Magical realism, yeah, definitely.
That's
Magical
a
realism.
shout out to my girlfriend that taught me that
yeah.
phrase. Yeah.
There you
She
go.
loves
Gabriel Garcia Marquez.
Yeah.
Was that the?
Yeah.
Was
there's-
that 100 Years of Solitude? Is that the?
Yeah.
She reads a lot of Isabella Allende. I actually
Okay.
read one of her books for the first time this summer, and it's a lot of, you know, spirits and stuff like that,
Yeah.
based in, like, you know, revolutionary South America and stuff
Yeah.
like that. It kind of ebbs and flows in between the two.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Like, so I know you had those two books, Transformations and Galway Bake Folk Tales, and then you had a collaboration then with God and the Brevity.
Oh yeah, God and the Brevity it's a short story. I mean, it's part of a longer novel that I had planned, but I couldn't get. Again, I write when I can, you know, as time and money allows, and time and money aren't abundant. So I've got a series of novels planned out, ready to go, but I can't get funding through the Arts Council, obviously, and I can't get support from publishers or anything like that. So that was one of the things, those planned novels. There was a segment in it called God and the Brevity, and it's a folkloric. It's like a folk tale from the future, and it was sometimes bubbling about in my head, and then Emma Zukovich.
I wasn't sure if I was going to pronounce that correctly.
I
But
may have not pronounced myself, but Emma,
we got there.
she's a lovely. She does artwork herself as well as documentaries. She made this wonderful short documentary. So it was that short story, that excerpt from the longer piece, the God and the Brevity, folk tale of the future, and then what she did when she had Little John Nee.
Ah, yes.
He does the music, and then Dave McGee is a lovely performance artist. She got him to perform to the music and the words, but we all done it separately because it was during lockdown. So you see that it's amazing how these three things blend: my story, Little John Nee's music, and Dave McGee's body movement, and she get it all, and it's great, and that's been winning awards and all sorts of stuff. That documentary,
Yeah,
which
that
is-
one, best short documentary in the Reykjavik.
Reykjavik, Independent Film Festival. That was one there as well. So that was kind of nice. It kind of gives me a wee bit of a boost because, I know I'm a genius when it comes to writing, but it's nice to have it affirmed that I'm a genius.
Yeah.
So, so what I'm doing now, I've given up on the whole kind of trying to reach out to publishers or agents or the Arts Council for support as a writer. I know I'm not going to get it. So I've been working on a lovely science fiction novel called Marcus and the Heart and Heart. And again, there's elements, and that's finished now and it's ready to go. And there's elements of, again, there's folkloric elements and magical realism elements in that sci-fi story. And just now I'm working with a lovely editor. Again, what a Galway person based in Galway here, Tegan, and she's kind of proofing and editing, and we're hoping to get that ready in the next couple of months, and it'll be nice to have another book out, a sci-fi book. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that, and who knows, well, maybe it'll get published properly eventually. But it's not my main thing. Is just getting it out, getting it finished. It's finished now, but just tightening it up and getting it really, getting it good. It's a great story.
What was the name of it again?
Marcus and the Hurting Heart.
Okay.
So keep an eye out for that in a couple of, by the time this comes out, it'll probably be published. So
Hopefully,
yeah.
hopefully we won't be too long getting this out now. To be honest with you,
Yeah, hopefully.
we might tighten up the old release schedule now. I'm getting warnings from the missus. It's great recording a podcast, but you actually have to release it for people to hear it. So
Yeah.
Yeah. You recorded an audio version of Marcus.
There's an earlier audio version which got its own audience, which was nice. But when I was rewriting it as a book, it still has the narrative arc of the podcast, but there's a lot of changes just in there that just it's funny when you again, it's one of these things like when I was writing Galway Folktales and when I was writing West of Ireland Folktales for Children. So I'm the stories I'm telling them one way because I'm speaking, but when I'm writing, I'm in a completely different headspace. So I didn't want to just try and recreate what I spoke into the story. So I rewrote those stories completely. So they're more literary works, the two books. And so I guess a certain element that went on with Marcus. I had a draft written down. I read it for the podcast. But even as I was reading it out and finishing an episode and getting it published, getting it out, as we all have to do, I was taking notes and realising, okay, I'm going to work on that if I ever get it into a book form. And so the book it's a bit different for the original podcast.
It works great in audio form, though. I did listen to a few of the first few chapters. I think I'm up on 10 now. But like, it's a big body of work.
It's massive. It's about 62 chapters long, and it's a pretty huge. I mean, I know folk who've listened to it all the way through, and I'm really impressed with them. Like, because it gets very twisted.
Yeah,
it gets very dark. I'm just warning anybody who wants to go and listen to that podcast. It's fun.
It's kind of it reminded me kind of 80s British sci-fi. I don't know if you ever read 2000 AD.
Yeah, I was brought up in 2000 AD. Yeah, definitely.
As soon as maybe the first two chapters, that's what it caught me straight away.
Well, thank you, because so my own background. So I was talking about the spoken word as part of my background in Glasgow. Another big part of it, I loved comics, and there was two comics that came out in the late 70s. One of them carried on, one of them just finished, but both of them were brilliant. And one of them was 2000 AD. Another one was called Misty. It was a kind of supernatural comic for girls.
Okay.
But it was amazing stories. I loved it. So my sister would get that, and I would get the 2000 AD. And both of them fed into me, and I guess again, it's one of those things talking about what culture is. It's the one that was aimed at men is the one that the investments went in and carried on, whereas the one that was aimed at women, it just died a death, which was a shame because Misty was every bit as good as 2000 AD.
I must Google that. Actually, I've never heard of it.
I haven't either.
And
I think it lasted maybe just a year or so.
Oh wow.
Wow.
But it was, I'm hoping I'm getting the name right, Misty. I think it was called Misty. And yeah, it was brilliant. Brilliant, weird twist. Really, women's brains. It was, young lads should be reading that just to know what their teenage friend, girl companions' heads are at.
Yeah.
Or maybe don't read it. Sometimes it's best not to know. Yeah.
Did you it's a funny thing about British sci-fi. It's kind of more grounded in realism than kind of the stuff you might get from other places. It's kind of more dirty and kind of a bit more gritty.
Seems really satirical as well all the time.
See, there's also a kind of subgenre within a lot of British sci-fi are actually Scottish, or they'd be English who've lived a long time in Scotland. So there's a lot of that kind of come through as well. That kind of twisted darkness and satire as well. That kind of political fuck you element to them. So there's definitely a lot of that going on, feed into my work as well. Who would be the guy I really enjoyed? Ian M. Banks.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, Ian M. Banks is just incredible.
What did he? Was it the What did he do again? Was it the Culture series?
Yeah,
is that
the
right?
Culture series.
Yeah. I've read like three of those books. That's really good stuff.
Yeah, he's just So there's definitely a specific. I mean, he comes from Scotland, and he's got a very specifically Scottish take on things. But again, you wouldn't really know that if you were outside, But there's British sci-fi, but there's actually a very strong Scottish element into it, and that Scottish element ties in with kind of I wouldn't want to say ties into the folkloric side of Scotland, but definitely ties into the kind of that storytelling that's quite dark and using these elements. Definitely echoes comes into the Scottish sci-fi. All that.
Perhaps a kind of warped sense of humour.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely warped sense of
in
humour.
the most positive way you could say that,
Yeah.
Is it the guy who wrote Neuromancer? Was he Scottish?
What's Neuromancer? What's Neuromancer?
Neuromancer was like the first one of the first like cyberpunk novels.
Oh, do you know? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if he was or not. I don't think he's American anyway.
Do you know what? We're all just going to throw that out to the universe, and somebody's going to get back to us. And tell us.
Hit up the Instagram if you know that answer. Let us know.
Neuromancer, Mona Lisa Overdrive. I think that's the same in the same series. No.
That's a swing and a miss for me now. Sorry.
Yeah, it's Neuromancer is great.
Yeah. What is it?
Neuromancer.
What's it about?
It's like all the tropes of cyberpunk. It's all in there, and it's
brilliant.
like he's plugging into the Matrix and whatever. I mean, it's before any of this stuff came out. I think it was even before personal computers were even properly in the home that he had written this book. But it was or at least widely around the place, But I read it probably like last year or something. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I'm terrible that I'm blanking on the name. Oh, William Gibson, maybe? William Gibson is probably his name. Yeah, I think that's it. But
my own writing, I think, because I come from a pre-digital world, my own writing, I guess, like Marcus Marx, it almost fits into the kind of space opera. It's big, and there's bold things going on, but there isn't so much tech in it. But there is magic in it.
Yeah.
So there's a time where it actually shifts. There's a point in the story where it shifts from being a kind of a straight on sci-fi, what's going to happen with twists along the way. There's a bit where it suddenly shifts into another realm. It goes into fantasy. So I don't really understand technology myself enough to actually. It's all that kind of thing. But I'd have to research tech to bring tech in,
Of course,
Yeah.
yeah.
and I couldn't do that.
No.
Whereas I don't have to research magic and folk tales and all that. I can just invent that and throw it in and just it's more
It's-
instinctive to me.
That's great that you're mixing the two. It's interesting you mentioned 2000 AD as well. Like in that, there's, I guess, what is it? What's the big one in that? Judge Dredd.
Oh yeah, Judge Dredd.
And then like in the same issue, you'd get Slain.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I love Slain. Slain's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
I was in the Bellbuck and Candle there about 6 months ago. And
What is
apparently
Bell Book and Candle?
in Galway. Yes, sorry. The well-known record store and bookstore in Galway, down the West End, right beside the Crane, actually. Isn't
Oh
it?
yeah, is it Paul? Is it Paul that runs that?
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
Paul,
yeah,
but
yeah. That's a
that's Paul's
great wee
shop.
shop. That's brilliant.
He was telling me that actually one of the original artists for Slain actually lives in Galway.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, he's knocking around here somewhere.
That's class.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Okay.
Must track him down.
All
Find him.
kinds of interesting people in the city, huh?
Yeah, blow-ins and blowouts.
Blow ups.
Blow-ups, yeah.
Imploders.
When you're talking about your own writing, I know you ghostwritten something recently.
I did. I was. I guess a lot of my art and my culture comes from me desperately trying to make money to feed my wains, which is I think is as valid a reason for writing as any others. I've
Definitely.
I'm waiting to the point. At some point in my life, I'll write for art's sake. But do you know what? I am certified when I actually get to the point where I do art for art's sake, it'll be complete shite. I think I need to have that kind of okay. I'm doing this because things have to get done. So that was it was a suggested story for a guy called his name is Sean Rasinger, I'm not sure. And he had I loved the idea for a story and characters and things. And so he kind of gave it on to me to turn into a book. And so it was great. And I'd keep coming back to him. His role was more like a commissioning editor role, even though his name was on the book. I mean,
Yeah.
his name deserves to be in the book because it was his idea originally, but the work for it was the research and the characters and the plotting. That's all my work. It's definitely a rap book in that sense. But that was kind of fun because I had to write it fast. So I had to research, I had to world build because there's all these different worlds. It's a fantasy novel set around different worlds. It's high fantasy, there's magic, there's all sorts. But there's also robots and it just kept throwing things at me and I would just have to kind of like, okay, I can take that. I can throw Cuchulainn. Fuck I can throw Cuchulainn. And I get back to me and say, I want some gnomes. I'd be like, fuck right, gnomes, robots, shit, I can do it all. And it was actually lovely. It was like having a wee... Do you know folk have got these apps now that can prompt writers to kind of ideas?
Yeah.
This was a human
Human prompt.
prompt, and it was actually brilliant. And it was like, okay, just throw the ideas at me, and I will throw the ideas, and I'd get back to him and say, well, why don't we try this? And then I'd do it, and it was nice, and it actually turned into a really, really, really amazing book. I'm very happy to stand over it as one of my books. It's brilliant. It's getting a lot of really nice feedback from its readers, and it's called The Heretic's Mount, and the name on the book is Sean Rasinger, I think. So yeah, go check that out.
Yeah.
But again, it was one of these things that it got me through the Christmas. It was definitely a feeding the wains book.
You can you can put that out at a quick pace, or is that a long drawn out process?
That was fast. That was
Yeah.
6 months, and it's about 125,000 words.
Jesus.
Wow.
Yeah. Boof, 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 boof.
Yeah.
Pay me the money, I'll do it. I'm just putting out to everybody now who's listening. Pay me the money, I'll do it. Yeah.
So what does ghostwriting entail in the sense of
Fast writing, taking on suggestions and ideas, and then going and developing them. I mean, there's different ways for that one. It was definitely me just getting a prompt and going off and researching it and
Okay.
creating a world and working out a plot. And then there was some ideas he wanted definitely to happen. So then I'd try and work out a way of getting the narrative to that point, and then make that happen in a way that worked. So that's one way of doing it. But then there's other ghostwriters. Somebody maybe it's like somebody's lived a life and it's their biography, and so then they're more involved in it, and that would be more collaborative. You know, somebody's actually telling somebody of their life, and then somebody else is writing it down and then teasing it out and talking to them. Whereas this was more just to kind of, I would say Sean's role was more like commissioning editor. That'd be kind of more his role.
Okay.
And I'd be the kind of author, but checking in with him about ideas and things.
Okay. It's
So-
interesting.
You would have been collaborated with Sean on that. And then from an educator standpoint, I know that you were working with Dr. Kate Harvey in NUIG.
Oh yeah, I've been working with Kate now for. We've been working together now. Good 5 or 6 years now. We work on a. Again, I love collaborating. It's one of these things, you know. There's this idea that artists kind of work with themselves and do their own thing, and I love collaborating. It's something I'm at my best when I collaborate. And so Kate and I, we work on it's a storytelling and narrative project. It's a 12-week course we do in NUI Galway. And the idea is I pass on the skills of storytelling, also story listening, and how to get other folk to create their stories. This goes back to my experience of getting other folk to tell their stories. So one of the things we're doing there is getting folk to use their own histories or their own cultures, their own background, and then creating new wonder tales or new folk tales for that. So then they can go back into the community to do that. So during lockdown, one of the things that Kate and I have done was a podcast, and for the life of me, I can't remember what it was called. I'm so tired now. But our
Is that
voices,
our stories?
our stories, our stories, and in that you won't hear me at all, or Kate. We occasionally hear us, but it was mostly us getting the skills to the students we were working with, and then they were working. Then they'd be working with students remotely, in Galway, in County Galway, and then those students were creating stories. And the last 2 episodes of it are just the stories the children are speaking, and it's like half the stories are English, half the stories are in Irish, and then the teenagers themselves, their family backgrounds would be obviously Galway, West Coast, Galway, Connemara, but then Poland, Senegal, all that kind of stuff. And the idea is, my own philosophy that I come from is that once you're here, your story is part of the Irish story.
Yeah.
And so my idea is to make sure that those narratives are brought in, and also just to kind of bring in those backgrounds and heritages and saying, no, these are good. And again, getting children to talk to their parents about those things as well. So there's 2 things going on. There's a narrative going on there of the students talking to me and Kate, and then the students working with the children and the teachers, and then the children engaging with their own families, their parents or their guardians. And there's all these little intermissions going on.
These carousels going around.
And it's all part of creating that idea that what is Irish and what is culture is wider than what we were talking about originally, the white male heterosexual who are lovely and beautiful and need to be celebrated. But there's a wee bit more going on than that.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be celebrated all the time.
Yeah. There's other voices, other cultures, and other identities, and they need to be in other languages. So
Of course, yeah. So you're working with an Argentinian writer and Spanish teacher, Noelia.
yeah.
What does that entail?
Well, it's it comes off the Celtic Tales show, because I've got kind of 3 different audiences feeding in. We've got a nice Galway crew coming in, and then you've got a kind of North American crew, but then you've got a kind of European crew coming as well, either because they're settled here or they come to the language schools,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of them would be Spanish speakers. So an idea evolved with Noelia being a writer, using words as well. Again, we're talking about language and words, that I would try telling one of my Galway, specifically Galway stories, with her translating into Spanish. But then it changed because obviously she's a writer, so she's engaging with language, so it's not translating. It became she's performing the story as well.
Okay.
So we're performing the story together in English and Spanish. So we've got the project is called Bajo las Olas, Beneath the Waves, and that builds on from one of my stories I like to tell, and it's also in the Galway Bay Folktales book. It's the Clara story, The City Beneath the Waves, and we tell that in English and in Spanish.
Oh wow.
And it's really nice because it ties in again because there's a lovely Spanish culture connected to Galway. You know, going right back, you know, with trade and the Armada and, you know, all that, even the Milesians, you know, there's all that kind of stuff goes all the way back. So again, it's all that kind of coming back round again. So we're working on that. So yeah, if any Spanish speakers out there want to hear the story in Spanish, give us a shout. We've got a nice show.
Yeah. So that show usually goes out 8 o'clock every Thursday from
The
the Crane
Celtic
Bar.
Tales show in English, not in Spanish. The Celtic Tales show in English goes out every Thursday in the Crane Bar. Obviously, there'll be no show over Christmas and stuff, so just check in. You know that it's definitely there. You can check in on the Instagram at Celtic Tales Galway. That's the best way to kind of find out what's going on.
And it's quite, I suppose we're talking about it here and we're like, oh, it's a lovely little storytelling show, but it's quite raucous.
It's
and
very raucous.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
more-
a
it's-
revival thing.
Yeah. It's nearly akin to a stand-up comedy show in parts as well, isn't it?
It does. There's parts which are it changes. Sometimes it's just pure comedy. Other times it's kind of slower, darker tales. And then other times it's more adventure tales but there's always little bits of humour leaking into the story. But then there's nights that are just completely raucous.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of lucky that the audience based here in Galway, the Galway audience, over the years have got to realise when you come to the show, you don't know what to expect. You just don't know what mood I'm going to be in. I could be going quiet and sinister, or I could be going full blast raucous humour. But I'm lucky that folk take both elements and enjoy them.
And there's a lot of audience participation then as well.
I'm very lucky that the audience wants to join in, and and over the years I've created spaces where actually they can bring in, you know, if there's stories that got sound effects, I just throw it to the audience, and it's now got to the point where I don't even need to ask the audience to do the sound effects. I just stop and they'll do it anyway.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
really nice.
You're kind of eliciting reactions all the time.
And that's wonderful for me. That if I'm exhausted, I just throw it to the audience, and they can just throw things at me. And yeah, that's great. I really enjoy. Again, it's part of the collaborative process. Again, it's storytelling is a collaborative process. You have the storyteller, but a storyteller doesn't exist without their audience. So the audience is as much a part of the event as the teller. So yeah, again, it's.
And is it like do you read the room as far as where it's going to go, and like if it's going to be raucous or if it's going to be dark, or is it just depends on your mood of the night?
Yeah, it depends on my mood. The reading of the room more comes into, I guess there's a lot of improv goes on there as well.
Yeah.
So I'll be picking up on things that go on in the audience and weaving that into the stories that's going, or actually I'll be stopping and throwing it back to the audience and getting their feedback. So yeah, there's a lot of that goes on as well.
Okay.
Well, Rab, thank you so much for joining us and filling in on all your many works,
Thank you very
ongoing
much
and
for
past
having
and
me.
future. So your Instagram at Celtic Tales is probably the best place to catch you.
Celtic Tales Galway.
Celtic Tales
Or
Galway.
you can email me on celtictales@gmail.com.
Perfect.
That's the things. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much.
Wonderful.
Thank you guys. I've enjoyed the snog. It's very, very relaxed.
Is it relaxed? That's good.
Good, good. You can come back anytime you want.
I will.
All right.
All right.